Well, welcome our Yes listeners. This is Carl Thomas, and I'm really excited today to be talking to the founders of Paper for Water. We have with us today the co-CEO, Katherine Adams, and one of the board members, who also happens to be her father, Ken Adams, is with us. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Your sister Isabel is one of the other co-CEOs, and she wasn't able to join us today, but we wanted to give her recognition as well.
Yes.
And so this is probably a little bit of a different story than we've typically shared with our listeners, but I know you're going to find it fascinating. And so let's kind of give an introduction. Katherine, if you don't mind, tell us about how this idea for Paper Water was born and sort of what got it going beyond that original idea.
Okay, so Paper for Water, when I was 5 actually, I learned that children my age didn't get to go to school because they were stuck hauling water all day. And that the water that they hauled all day was dirty and was making them die. So I thought that that was really unfair because most of the time it's girls that are stuck hauling water and they can't get an education. And if you can't get an education, just the cycle of poverty continues. So my older sister and I thought, well, I bet we can do something about this. And my dad is half Japanese, so he grew up learning how to fold origami. And it was just a fun craft that my family loved doing together. And we were like, well, why not do something we love and help other people? So that's kind of where the idea for Paper for Water started.
So had you been doing the origami just as a family activity even before you had the idea?
Yes, so actually my sister, she would go to school an hour before me, and my dad would take me to my school, and we'd go sit in the workroom, and he'd usually bring cookies or something like that, and we'd fold origami.
A neat tradition to get started. So you discovered this need, this really critical need for clean water. How did that migrate to what can we do about it?
So actually, one of our neighbors, she had gone on 2 drilling trips with Living Water International. And she came over and she brought her scrapbook and she showed us pictures of all these children there. And she told us that a child died every 15 seconds from unclean water. And we were like, well, we need to do something. And so, being a 5 and 8-year-old, usually it's a lemonade stand or something like that. But we just love making origami, and we thought that that was something unique and that a lot of other people wouldn't do. And so that's kind of what we did.
Yeah, so you had a special offering in a way, not just the traditional what all the other kids might be trying to sell, and applying it to a really critical need in terms of what other children could benefit from this. So what was your first goal when you came up with that idea?
So we were actually trying to raise about $500 to $1,000, which would partially fund a well in Ethiopia.
Okay. And
we started on November 3rd, and we did like a little art show per se, and we invited all our friends and their parents. And by the end of the year, we had raised over $10,000 and overfunded a whole well in Ethiopia.
That's fascinating. So that obviously gave you a taste of the fact that there was a real market for this kind of an approach. What happened next?
Well, since we overfunded that well, we were like, well, we might as well go for another one. And after overfunding that one and the next one, we were like, well, we should probably keep doing this for a little while. And a 1-month project turned into a 7-year project.
Wow.
So.
And still going strong.
And still going strong, yes.
Well, maybe if I can just check in with Dad for a moment. Ken, what was your perspective about as this was evolving and what you thought was good or concerning? Or
So we had done several projects actually before this particular origami project. When they were 3 and 5, we actually made these wooden cutouts of dogs that they put their handprints all over, and we called them Dogs Looking for a Handout, and we sold those at Starbucks. Okay. So this was actually the 3rd kind of art show that they'd had. The manager at Starbucks knew who they were. They were a known entity, and he had gone from just a single Saturday to saying that they could have, for this project, the Starbucks for the whole month. And so it's kind of this evolution, and my goal with at least the first two projects was to teach them some basic business skills. You know, you're creating something and then you're selling it, and then what do you do with the money afterwards? Some of it went to church, some of it went to their own savings account, some of it they got to spend, and then the vast majority of it we actually donated to. The first event was Children's Medical Center, and then the second event was Parkland's Pediatric Burn Camp. And it was really neat. They got to meet the staff at the hospital and give them a check, and both girls said, "Oh, this is so much fun, let's keep doing this kind of stuff." So that's how we got to the third event with the origami. And I just assumed it was going to be another 1 month project and we'd be on to the next whatever. And that didn't happen. It has continued to grow.
Well, and a number of other business challenges I'm sure have come up along the way. I mean, you had to become a formal 501(c)(3). That one probably was not a small effort.
At the time, the nonprofit status was under scrutiny by the IRS, and so what should have been a 1 or 2 month process ended up taking over a year to get our status approved. And so in the interim, we were a flow-through program to what we consider kind of our parent entity, Living Water International. But then we spun out separately as a 501(c)(3) because of donor privacy laws. Living Water couldn't provide information about our donors to us, and we couldn't communicate with them and create that relationship that's needed for ongoing programmatic development with our donors. So yes, it took a lot of decision making to decide we wanted to be our own nonprofit, and we still, even though we're 7 years into this, occasionally are regretful that we have our own nonprofit because of all the responsibilities that go with that.
Yes.
But at the same time, we couldn't have grown as large as we are now if we weren't our own entity.
If it had just been for profit, it would have had a little bit different flavor to it.
It would have. I think it speaks differently to our donors when we can say that at the very beginning, 100% of everything that we raised was going to developing water projects, and now 85 to 90%. We have some overhead now. We have part-time staff, and we have to pay for a lot of our supplies. We get as much as we can donated, and spend a lot of time trying to cultivate those relationships with corporations. But still, we're able to send the vast majority of what we make to project development.
That's wonderful. So, Katherine, after the first 2 or 3 wells, and clearly you saw that this could be more than a few month project, describe kind of what kind of growth have you experienced from them over the last 7 years?
It's been amazing. We now have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers that help us fold. We have a group that meets once a week. We have a group that meets once a month. We have tons of people who want to help. We also have companies that we are involved with and that just are really dedicated. It's just been incredible to see how this 1 month project has grown, and it's just been amazing.
So I guess in some of your metrics would be how much money have you raised, how many wells have you been able to sponsor? Tell us a little bit about that.
So over the past 7 years, we've been able to raise over $1.5 million and help to fund over 170 water projects.
So I'm going to step in there, and we actually have our 2018 numbers in. We're actually up to about 1.7 million with over 200 projects in 20 countries. So her numbers are correct, and nothing's been updated on our website yet. That is, you have the hot off the presses numbers.
Wow, that's exciting.
It is.
And you've had a chance to go see some of the results of your efforts, is that right?
Yes. So actually 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, we took off 8 months from school, and my parents, they quit their jobs, we sold our cars, and we traveled around the world, and we got to see a ton of our water projects. And it was just such an amazing experience, and it was just great.
I would guess that really reinforced or fueled the fire, you might say, for the passion that you had already started with.
Yes, definitely. Just seeing the people and meeting them, hearing their stories, seeing the kids happy, healthy in school, just, it was really encouraging.
That's really so cool. So, obviously from 1 or 2 wells to over 200, you've probably had a few hiccups along the way or a few challenges. Well, tell us a little bit about some of those things you had to figure out.
So paper for water takes up a couple hours a week, and on the weekends usually on average 2 to 3, depends what season. So it's sometimes difficult to fit in school and sports and extracurricular activities. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, just to juggle everything. And also just producing everything. Our house is kind of like a warehouse now. We have tons of ornaments and literally everything we need for paper for water in our house. But just producing this vast number of ornaments, it's been challenging.
You have quite a bit of inventory, it sounds like, that you're having to keep track of.
Yes, yes.
So it's been convenient, of course, you have a home with some space to do that in. Someday you might have to look elsewhere.
We have been trying to get an office space for a little while now.
Okay.
Looking into that, just so we can expand a little bit more and have more space.
What about in terms of other resources? Your dad had mentioned some other part-time people. What other kind of assistance have you acquired as you've grown?
Well, when we first started out, we had a volunteer part-time executive director, and she was able to guide us through our 501c3 application. And then we had a full-time executive director for a short period of time, and we had to balance his salary with what was being accomplished. And as we took our trip around the world, we definitely needed someone back here running the show. But we transformed that to a kind of a part-time position, and had some of our board members step up to the plate with providing more volunteer hours while we were gone. So we are always conscious about how much money we're spending on our own staff here, and how much we're sending to projects, and trying to balance that. And it's been hard. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. Obviously, Isabel and Catherine and now Trinity are kind of the face of the non-for-profit, and we have a lot of volunteers who go on speaking engagements too, but then there's also a lot that goes on behind the scenes, from scheduling and talking to all the people who want the girls to do presentations, and coordinating things behind the scenes, as well as the legal and accounting that goes on, that we have to abide by all the IRS regulations. So for me, it's probably 20 hours a week that I spend on this, and for my wife, it's a full-time volunteer position. 40 hours a week is really kind of what she spends on this, and it is a lot. Yeah, it is a lot.
So in terms of the projects, tell us about what kind of challenges do you have, if there are any, on finding where you want to sponsor an effort.
So we have partnered with Living Water since the very beginning, and they are an amazing organization. They are just incredible in the way that they do it. They're actually with the community for, I think, 2 to 3 years. And before they put in the water project, the community actually has to apply to them to receive a water project. Because if you give a community something that they don't want, they're not going to use it.
Right.
And they just stay with the community. They teach them basic hygiene and sanitation, and they provide all of our projects. They give us a list at the beginning of the year of projects that haven't been funded, and we try to find where the greatest need is. But they have just been incredible to work with. So.
Are there more projects than you can support at the moment, or how would you describe that?
They give us a list, and we do have to pick and choose sometimes. We try to do as many projects as we can, but there are always some that we can't fund. So
because of the scope of the project or whatever is required there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm on Living Water's board, and spent a lot of time with them. I was just in Kenya 2 weeks ago for an All-Africa Summit. So Living Water is a $25 million a year organization, and they do anywhere from 1,600 to 1,900 projects a year. And they vary in size from simple boreholes that run about $10,000 to larger water development projects that include containment units, and they service 300-400 households. So there's a big variation in the type of projects that they do. The one thing they don't do at the moment is desalination, and that's something that we've been discussing, because obviously 7% of the world's covered by salt water.
Right.
So there's a lot of water out there.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Have you had any projects that you had to abandon?
I don't think so. We've had to. So we have another organization that we work domestically with, Dig Deep, and Dig Deep. There are 1.6 million people in the United States without access to clean water, and 80% of them live on Native American reservations. And so we have been working on a really difficult project on the Smith Lake Navajo Reservation in New Mexico that has had a couple of hiccups along the way, but we haven't abandoned it. It's on the Continental Divide. It is granite hard rock. It required a well that went down 2,000 feet to the second aquifer, a non-rechargeable aquifer. So that was a $500,000 well project. And then because the homes can be sometimes as far as 25 miles away from each other, piping up to each individual house is not a reasonable answer. So we put in containment units, 1,200-gallon containment units at each house. And there's a food-grade truck that delivers water to their house once a month. So that has been a very challenging project. Very rewarding. We've developed some great relationships out there, and because it's close, we get to go more frequently and see those individuals. But that has been filled with complications.
I can see that.
Yeah, but unless it's there are fewer people served per dollar because of the cost of doing things here in the United States, but just a huge need here too.
So give us a little bit of an idea, Katherine, about kind of what are you hoping for in the next 5 or 7 years? What do you see for Paper for Water?
We definitely want to expand our volunteer base. That's always something that we like to keep growing. And looking for more corporate partnerships. And just keep getting bigger and growing.
Mm-hmm. What about in terms of your offerings? Is origami going to cut it for the next 10 years?
Probably yes.
Okay.
We're trying to
exciting.
Also do installations. Those have been something we've been looking into.
What do you mean by that?
So for the Galleria, we did 4,000 butterflies,
mm-hmm.
and it hung over their ice skating rink. So not on that scale, but maybe smaller. We've done one at the Crow Collection of Asian Art, and we're looking into doing some at office spaces.
Okay.
So just kind of smaller, but just something different than ornaments.
Sure. Okay. Excellent. Well, we're really excited that you're going to be a part of our symposium that's coming up in a few weeks in early March. And we're really looking forward to talking about a little more in detail how you've worked through some of these challenges, how you've decided to grow, what you're having to prepare for. The bigger you get, the more complicated it is in just about every way. So some things you can anticipate, some things you can't, and we'll be excited to learn what you're considering to do there. One of the themes of our symposium has to do with the change in our economy that is sort of happening to us, whether it be social media presence or how you market yourself or things of that nature. So we'll be looking forward to learning from you about how you've been impacted by that and what you're doing to get out ahead of that and take advantage of some of those changes.
Mm-hmm.
We can definitely speak to that because
yeah.
We're working very hard on building up our YouTube subscribers and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram.
All of those things.
Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time to come and talk with us. This has just been a great start, and I can't wait to really get to know you both much better in a few weeks. And I know our YES community will welcome you with open arms, so you might want to bring a few ornaments along with you to
definitely
tantalize them a little bit. So again, well, thank you very much. This is again Carl Thomas with Ken Adams and Katherine Adams of Paper for Water, and please stay tuned and join our symposium in March to hear more about what's really been accomplished with this incredible organization. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right. Great. That was right at 20 minutes, so that's a great time.
Good.
So, excellent.
Do you feel okay about that?
Yes.
Good. You did a great job.
You're 12 years old?
I just turned 13.
Just turned 13. I'm very eloquent. Thank you.
She has grown into this very nicely.
She has.
Well,
She's
just
a
hearing her
natural.
even talk about her younger sister, like she doesn't have the passion for it. I love that. That's awesome.
We're trying. We're working on it.
Yeah, she'll get there.
Have you seen their video from, what was it, 2012 or something? And they're 6 and 8 years old.
I watched that.
I did see that.
You did see that one?
When we were preparing for all of this, and
I just
even then,
love that.
it's like,
Oh yeah.
I need to go back and look at that so we can
Which
have
one
that
was
as a
it?
comparison.
The living water one?
Hello, Mr. CEO.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The school they go to, Providence,
It's
is so geared towards what they're doing. They spend so much time memorizing.
you present in front of the class all the time.
Yeah.
You do projects like that where you have to get up, recite stuff. You do tons of like memorization, recitation. It's been great for what we do.
Mhm.
It has been. It has been. And you can. It's interesting to listen to their cadence of speech, and like, oh, that's from school, and they don't do it as much as they used to, but you could definitely tell when stuff was memorized.
Yeah.
It's
been a great
and she's got all the
supportive-
facts, everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
Are
I
you
think the symposium, the people at the symposium are just going to be kind of blown away because
think so, too.
it's a totally different story
It is.
than what we're used to. It's
Cool.
going to be fantastic.
Excited. Isabel, so we actually have a Tory Burch Foundation Women's Day that
Am I not going to do that?
we're going to show up late because we're doing this, and that's why Isabel's not going to be here at the Yes event.
at the yes event? Yeah.
And we'll be able to hang out for a little bit afterwards, but then we're going to have to take
get
off
over to there,
and
sure.
get over to
That's
the.
understandable. Are you? This is more personal. Are you still practicing medicine?
I haven't actually had an active patient practice since about 2005 or 2006.
Okay.
So my background, I had a physician group, single specialty, multi-physician group here in the North Texas area. We contracted with a company that was based in St. Louis. I got promoted to being their chief medical officer in 2005, and I left my practice here. 2008, the CEO offered me the opportunity to go start my own company because the legal department had said we don't want that liability within our company. So he gave me an amazing severance package with the anticipation that I use that to go start this company. I contracted with them for the first 3 years of the company, and then 3 years after that sold that company to Texas Health Resources.
Okay.
And got brought into their senior management and worked with them for 2 years as part of my earnout, and then took off with them around the world. And since I've been back, I've been doing consulting work and fundraising for another business.
What was your specialty?
Physiatry, so it's physical medicine and rehabilitation.
Okay.
And my main passion is sports medicine. I was the team physician for the U.S. cycling team for a number of years and traveled the world to world championship events.
And apparently was a boxing doctor.
I was the
I
team
didn't even know
physician for
about
the 2005 national championships.
Boxing probably needs a lot of doctoring.
It was one event that I staffed, and after that I was like, I'm not comfortable with this. There are too many injuries.
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It's almost the point.
Well, it is, yeah, and that's the problem is,
Yeah.
like, I would have pulled everyone and told them not to box, and all of them wanted to go back and box, and I'm like, I don't want that kind of liability, because you're not,
Like, I'm not comfortable with this.
yeah, you're not following my recommendations.
I remember you said you did an event or something with children's. What was that again?
Well, so because I did my training here at UT Southwestern,
Mhm.
I knew all the staff
Oh, sure.
there, and Children's Medical Center, just the initial donation that we gave was to fund their general programmatic, their programs for kids that are there for extended periods of time and have to do all their schoolwork. So I knew the social worker that ran that department.
Yeah.
And they're always looking for assistance with that. And then Parkland's Pediatric Burn Camp is this awesome program down at Camp John Mark for their patients that come through that are pediatric patients that have sustained third-degree burns and have been in the burn unit, because that's obviously a life-changing experience for them.
Our daughter is a nurse, and she, about 2 years ago, joined Children's in a clinic they were opening up that is exclusively dedicated to foster care families. And so all of the patients she sees they're not hospital patients. They're just they're kids who need medical care, and they're in foster families. That's been a real eye-opening experience for
It's
her.
got to be hard.
Yeah, it's because you can imagine all the challenges both the kids and the families have to work through. And some of them actually are fairly sick, so they have health problems to add on to just the challenges of being fostered. So it's a great work, but it of course is a challenging one. But I think of those kinds of environments where you probably get this all the time. Well, maybe you could do something to expand your capabilities with partnering with groups like that. You never know.